Queen Amanirenas prepares to fight the greatest battle of her life. Rome has conquered vast territories of her kingdom. King Teritecus, her husband, has died under an ambush of fierce Roman warriors led by the fearsome General Petronious. The Queen, forced to retreat into the marshlands, has suffered brutal defeats at the hands of the mighty general. Petronius is now marching south with a strong army to conquer the whole of Kush. But Queen Amanirenas, unrelenting in her defense of Kush and seeking revenge for her king, arms her soldiers and war elephants for a counterattack. Who will win? Will Kush retain its independence, or will Rome expand its growing empire? Watch on to discover more, and don't forget to subscribe to Timbuktu Tales.
Under the cover of darkness, she split her forces. Prince Akinidas led a decoy army east, drawing Petronius's scouts into the desert with false trails. Meanwhile, Amanirenas and her most elite warriors sailed north, slipping past Roman patrols on the Nile. By dawn, they were at the gates of Napata. The Romans had fortified the city, but they had not expected an attack. The Kushites struck like a sandstorm, swift, brutal, and relentless. Archers rained fire upon the watchtowers, while Kushite sappers collapsed sections of the walls. Amanirenas herself led the charge through the breach, her war elephant crushing Roman defenders beneath its feet. Inside the city, the battle turned to slaughter. The remaining Roman garrison, outnumbered and unprepared, fell before the Kushite blades. The sands of Napata ran red beneath the scorching sun as Queen Amanirenas led her warriors in a furious storm of steel and vengeance. Her missing eye, hidden beneath a strip of black leather, fought like a woman possessed, her curved blade carving through armor, her voice rallying her warriors as the enemy lines buckled. Roman cavalry, gleaming in segmented armor, thundered across the dunes, their long spather swords flashing, only to meet the devastating charge of Kushite horsemen, their lighter frames allowing them to wheel and strike like desert vipers. Lances shattered against shields, horses screamed as they went down in a tangle of limbs, and riders from both sides fell into the churning maelstrom of infantry combat below. On the ground, the battle raged with brutal intensity. Roman legionaries locked shields in their unyielding testudo formation, forming a strong torsus shell as they moved forward. But even these were smashed apart by Kushite war elephants, their tusks fitted with deadly iron blades. Nubian archers rained death from the cliffs above, while Amanirenas herself carved through the fray, her curved sword cleaving through armor and flesh alike. Her elite guard fought beside her, their iron axes crushing Roman helms as the two armies clashed in a whirlwind of spears, swords, and sheer desperation. The air filled with the metallic tang of blood, the cries of the dying, and the relentless war drums of Kush. Arrows rained from Nubian archers perched on the cliffs, their deadly hail pinning the legionaries in place, while the Queen's personal guard, a wall of muscle and steel, carved a path straight for the Roman standard. Roman discipline began to crack under the ferocity of the assault, their lines buckling as Kushite cavalry circled behind them, cutting off retreat. Prince Akinidas, spotting Petronius's banner, urged his horse forward, only to be met by a wall of Praetorian horsemen. Blades clashed in a deadly dance until at last the Roman lines broke. Petronius's forces, disciplined but outmaneuvered, fought desperately to hold their ground, but the Prince of Kush was relentless in his push. Across the field, his mother, the Queen, was fighting from atop her mighty elephant. Around her, Kushite warriors surged forward, their iron-tipped spears glinting beneath the merciless sun. The war elephants, clad in bronze scales, trampled through Roman ranks, their thunderous charge shaking the earth. With a final brutal push, Kushite soldiers shattered the Roman formation, her sword taking the head of a centurion mid-swing. As the survivors fled toward the river, the queen raised her bloodied sword in triumph. The prince rode on his horse across a field strewn with piles of bodies, Kushite and Roman alike, and planted the Kush banner atop the ruins of Rome's fortifications. Napata was free, but the cost was written in the bodies strewn across the sand. She led her elephant toward the great temple of Napata, behind the holy mountain where her ancestors had prayed to Amun and Ra and other great gods for centuries. What stood there was not Kushite gods, but Roman ones, for which the temple now stood. Smoke curled from the sacked Roman outpost as Queen Amanirenas ascended the temple steps, her war elephant's bulk casting a long shadow across the toppled columns. Her warriors fell silent as she dismounted, the only sound the clank of her iron scale armor and the dry whisper of sand against stone. She drew not a sword, but King Teretekas's own ceremonial axe, whose blade that had tasted Roman blood at Napata. "See how your emperor kneels before Amun," she roared as she raised the axe, its sharp edges gleaming in the dusk sky. Amanirenas tightened her grip on the heavy bronze axe, her muscles coiled with the fury of a woman who had lost a husband, an eye, and nearly a kingdom to Rome's arrogance. "This," she spat, "is for Napata." The first strike sent a crack splintering through the marble. Chips of stone flew like shattered teeth. "This is for my husband." The second blow split the statue at the knees, sending Augustus crashing to the ground in a cloud of dust. The head rolled free, its imperial nose smashed, its lips still curled in that eternal, condescending calm. A roar erupted from her warriors as Amanirenas planted her foot on the severed head, her single blazing eye fixed on the northern horizon, where Rome still festered. "Let them carve 1,000 statues," she growled. "We will break them all." The priests of Amun, standing at the temple's ruined gates, lifted their hands in prayer. The gods had spoken. Around her, Kushite warriors and their Nubian allies roared in triumph. When word reached Petronius, on his march to Meroe, he turned his legions around in great rage. He ordered his troops to march north toward Napata and rout the armies of Amanirenas. "Third and fifth cohorts, you ride with me north. We shall flush them out of my city, cut them down to the last man. No prisoners, no retreat. And when the path is clear, we march on Meroe and tear that one-eyed witch from the throne." His breath came fast, his knuckles white around the hilt of his dagger. "Rome does not stumble in the mud. We crush those who make us kneel in it." With a final venomous glare, he turned toward the looming silhouette of the northern horizon. Staring at his lead riders, he snarled, "Now go, before I lose what little patience the gods have left me." But it was too late. Amanirenas had already set traps along their way. Petronius kicked his lathered horse onward, the beast's hooves pounding against the cracked earth as arrows hissed past his head. The retreat from Meroe had become a nightmare. Every mile back toward Napata was a fight. Every shadow held death. First, the pits. Hidden beneath thin layers of sand, they yawned open without warning. His vanguard plunged in first, their screams cut short by the iron spikes at the bottom. Their corpses lined the path, left as grim markers by the Kushites. Yet he rode on. Then came the arrows. They came not from warriors, but from the land itself, loosed by some hidden mechanism when his column passed crumbling ruins. His men died with shafts jutting from throats and eyes, their bodies left to bake in the sun as warnings. But he pressed on, driven by his goal of conquering the whole land for Rome. But then came the fire. Ahead, the narrow pass to Napata burned. Queen Amanirenas' warriors had torched a large section of dry bushes and grasses, creating a seemingly impenetrable wall of fire. As Petronius watched, flaming arrows raced down from the cliffs above, further igniting the walls of flame that now blocked his path. His horse retreated in panic as the heat licked at them. "Turn back!" the centurion shouted. We must find another way. Petronius gritted his teeth. There is no other way. He drew his sword, pointing toward the inferno. Ride through, or die here. His remaining men, those not already picked off by Kushite skirmishers, exchanged terrified glances, but discipline held. They charged. The heat was unbearable. Petronius's cloak caught fire, and he tore it free just as his horse screamed and collapsed beneath him, its legs giving out from exhaustion and burns. He rolled, coming up with his shield raised, just in time to block the spear hurled at his chest. From the smoke emerged the Queen's warriors, their faces painted for death. "For Kush!" they roared. Petronius met them with steel in hand, knowing this was no battle. It was an execution. Petronius fought like a cornered wolf, his sword arm burning with exhaustion, but still deadly. A Kushite warrior lunged, the glint of a curved blade aiming for his throat. Petronius pivoted, letting the strike graze his shoulder as he drove his gladius up under the man's ribs. Hot blood sprayed his face as he yanked the blade free and spun to meet the next attacker. An arrow thudded into his shield, another whipped past his ear. He could hear his men dying around him, their shouts cut short by ambush after ambush. Then, a horn blast. Distant but unmistakable, Roman horns. Through the haze of smoke and blood, Petronius saw the flash of imperial banners. Reinforcements from Casa Ibrim surging forward to cut through the Kushite skirmishers. With a hoarse battle cry, he rallied his surviving soldiers and charged toward salvation, cutting down any who stood in his path. "Retreat! Retreat!" he commanded them. He didn't look back at the corpses he left behind, the ones who hadn't been fast enough, strong enough, lucky enough to survive the Queen's traps. When he finally collapsed inside gates, his armor dented and his body trembling with exhaustion, one thought burned in his mind. Amanirenas would pay for this. He had left behind a battalion at striking distance from Napata, as a buffer between himself and Queen Amanirenas. But he had no choice but to retreat and strategize at his fortress, his last great defense, Casa Ibrim. Ambushes had whittled down his forces, and scorched earth tactics had left his men starving. His army was exhausted, and the Queen's defenses were ready. He needed time to re-strategize and seize back all that had been lost. Then, the message came. The scroll arrived at Casa Ibrim on the wings of a storm. Petronius knew its seal before he even broke it, the imperial insignia of Augustus himself, pressed deep into crimson wax. His hands, calloused from years of war, trembled ever so slightly as he unfurled the parchment. The words struck like a dagger to the ribs.
Gaius Petronius, General of the 3rd Legion. Your campaign in Kush has brought shame, not glory, to Rome. You were sent to conquer, not to be outmaneuvered by a one-eyed queen who fights with the savagery of a desert jackal. The Senate grows restless. The treasury bleeds gold for a war you cannot win. You are hereby commanded to withdraw all legions from Kushite territory immediately. Secure what remains of Roman dignity at the border, then return to Rome, not in triumph, but in disgrace. You will answer for this failure before the emperor's court. Do not test my patience further. Augustus Caesar, Imperator of Rome.
Petronius crushed the scroll in his fist, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Around him, his officers stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the floor. The air in the command tent was thick with the scent of sweat and fear. "So this is my reward," he snarled, his voice dangerously low. "Years of service, battles won in the name of Rome, and now I am to slink back like a whipped dog." A junior tribune dared to speak. "Perhaps the emperor does not understand the terrain, the cunning of the enemy." Petronius backhanded him across the face, sending the young man sprawling into a table of maps. "The emperor understands only one thing, defeat." He turned to the rest, his gaze burning. "You will withdraw the legions. You will leave this God's forsaken land. But mark my words, This is not over. He strode out of the tent, the weight of humiliation pressing upon him like a physical force. The Kushites would celebrate, Amanirenas would gloat, but Petronious swore to himself as the Nile's bitter wind stung his face that one day, Rome would return. And when it did, he declared, El will make sure Meroe burns. Back in Meroe, the morning sun bled gold across the temple complex of Amun as Queen Amanirenas ascended the sacred steps, her bare feet pressing into stone still cool from the night. The air hummed with the chants of priests, the scent of myrrh thick as smoke curled toward the heavens. Behind her, the severed head of Emperor Augustus's statue, its marble features now chipped and dull, lay wrapped in a blood-red cloth, soon to be buried where no Roman would ever find it. Workers toiled in the shadow of the temple, their shovels biting into the earth as they dug a pit deep enough to swallow empires. A priest marked the spot with a staff of ivory, his voice low. Let the arrogance of Rome rot beneath our soil, forgotten by the gods. The high priest's voice rang out like thunder over the gathered crowd. As the workers heaved the marble head into the pit, the temple chorus began their rhythmic incantation, their voices rising and falling like the Nile's eternal current. Amun hears, the boastful sink, the proud are humbled, the stone gods drown. Drummers took up the cadence, their palms pounding hides stretched taut over cedar frames. With each strike, the workers shoveled black earth onto the effigy, the dust rising in ghostly plumes. Let their names be ash, let their pride be sand. What the river takes, never walks again. Amanirenas paused at the threshold of the inner sanctum, where the towering statue of Amun loomed, its golden eyes gleaming in the dim light. She knelt, pressing her forehead to the cold floor, and whispered the old prayers, not for victory, but for wisdom. Napata had been secured, but Rome was not defeated. It still loomed like a dangerous shadow on its northern borders. Rome still had a massive stronghold in Alexandria. It was only a matter of time before the legions came down once again. Securing lasting peace would be its own battle. Great Amun, as Rome's pride is buried in darkness, let Kush rise everlasting in your light. Her whisper was steel wrapped in sacred smoke, a vow, not a plea. Silence followed. Then, a whisper of wind through the temple columns, stirring the hanging linens. The priests bowed deeply. Outside, the workers heaved the marble head into the pit. They kept on chanting, Amun hears! The boastful sink, the proud are humbled. Sand swallowed it whole. Silence followed. Then, a whisper of wind through the temple columns, stirring the hanging linens. As the queen rose, a breeze stirred the temple banners. Like the breath of the god himself, the priests murmured, a good omen. The messenger arrived in at dusk, his Roman armor dulled by desert dust, his escort of Kushite scouts watching him like jackals circling wounded prey. He knelt before Queen Amanirenas in the great hall of Meroe, his head bowed. The emperor grows weary of this war, the envoy declared. He offers you peace. His head still bowed, a scroll case extended in trembling hands. From Gaius Petronious, by order of Augustus Caesar, the translator announced, voice tight with unease. Amanirenas took the case, her single eye gleaming in the torchlight as she unrolled the parchment. The words, translated from Greek into Meroitic, the language of her kingdom, were crisp and precise.
To Queen Amanirenas, Lioness of Kush, Rome did not come to your lands seeking endless war. The sands have drunk enough blood. The Nile has borne enough corpses. Let there be peace between our peoples. The Emperor Augustus, in his wisdom, recognizes the sovereignty of Kush. Withdraw your warriors from our occupied forts, and we shall withdraw our legions beyond the first cataract. Trade shall flow again along the river. and no Roman spear shall threaten Meroe so long as your hand remains open, not clenched in fury. Send your envoys to Alexandria, and let us speak as rulers, not as beasts tearing at each other's throats. Gaius Petronius, prefect and legate of Egypt.
Silence filled the hall. Prince Akinidas, standing at her side, was the first to break it. "A trick," he hissed. "They fear us now, so they offer poisoned honey." Amanirenas ran her fingers over the parchment, feeling the weight of the words. She could refuse. She could fight until the last of her people perished, but she was a queen, not a fool. Amanirenas studied the scroll, her face unreadable. "Tell your emperor," Amanirenas said, her voice like tempered steel, "that Kush accepts his terms." The envoy bowed. She looked at her son Akinidas, who stood beside her. His eyes held the same fire as his father's. One day he would rule. And one day, perhaps, he would be in a position to make diplomatic decisions. When his time to govern comes, he would have learned the cost of both war and peace. Once again, she spoke. "Tell Petronius this," she said. "Kush does not kneel, but we are not fools. We will meet in Alexandria. But if Rome's hand falters, if one legion crosses the border, we will burn your forts to the ground and salt the earth where they stood." She handed the scroll back to the messenger. "Now go, and pray your masters keep their word better than they keep their arrows." As the Roman departed, Akinidas turned to her. "You trust them?" Amanirenas smiled, sharp as a sickle blade. "Number, but I trust what they fear." She looked toward the north, where the Nile curled like a serpent toward the sea. "Let them have their peace. We will use it to forge better spears." Outside, the wind carried the scent of iron from the royal foundries. The war was over. With the war drums silenced, Queen Amanirenas and Prince Akinidas turned their fury into fortification, their vengeance into vision. The peace bought with Roman blood was not spent in idleness, it was forged into legacy. In the heart of the desert, beneath the watchful gaze of Amun, they began to rebuild. Along the Nile, new granaries rose from the earth, their mud brick walls thick against future famine. The prince himself oversaw the digging of deeper wells along the desert trade routes, ensuring Kush's merchants could cross the sands without thirst as their companion. In Meroe's iron foundries, the envy of other kingdoms, hammers rang day and night, not for spearheads, but for plowshares. The queen ordered the construction of a great canal, its waters diverting the river's bounty to fields that would feed generations. But Amanirenas, ever the warrior, also built walls. Massive bastions of sandstone now encircled Meroe, their foundations set deep enough to crack the bones of any who dared undermine them. Watchtowers dotted the northern border, their beacons ready to ignite at the first hint of Roman treachery. And in the temple precincts, new shrines rose, not just to Amun, but to Teretekas, the fallen king, his name carved beside the gods, where even time would struggle to erase it. Trade flourished. Merchants from far and wide returned to the Nile's markets, their ships and camels laden with olive oil, cloth, glass, and others in exchange for Kushite gold and ebony. The queen allowed it, but taxed every vessel that passed the Nile and every camel that crossed the Sahara, the coins stamped with her one-eyed profile, a reminder of who truly controlled the river and the desert. For 10 years, the peace held. Then, the messengers came again. This time, not from Rome, but from the south. The kingdom of Aksum was on the rise and had set its targets on crushing Kush. But that is another story, one for another day. For now, Kush stood unbroken. Trade flourished with their neighbors, and the borders remained stable, bringing about a golden age during which Kushite artists made great works of art. The people of Kush lived in great joy, and their society flourished, courtesy of the ultimate sacrifice made by King Teretekas and the military brilliance of Amanirenas, the one-eyed queen who defeated Rome.
Thanks for watching yet another episode of Timbuktu Tales. Like, share and subscribe to watch more of such amazing tales from Africa. Are there any stories you would like us to work on? Feel free to share your ideas in the comments section below. And hey, don't forget to hit that notification bell to always get updates.